A lady went into a very busy butcher shop. She saw dozens of dressed chicken hanging there. She went there, lifted a leg and smelled, lifted another leg and smelled, lifted a wing and smelled. Like this she went on from chicken to chicken. Then the butcher came and tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Ma'am, could you pass a test like that?" You won't. So don't go about smelling around, what's wrong with this guy, what's wrong with her, what's wrong with him, what's wrong with her, what's wrong with him. All of them stink a bit. Yes, every tree, every plant, in some way rooted in filth. But the question is only, does it throw out a fragrant blossom? That's all the question is. If the roots are bloody clean, it will not throw out anything wonderful. Are we in the process of transformation? Because this is the nature of life. Are we a continuous process of transformation? Because everything is. Everything else on the planet is in the process of transformation. Are you a process of transformation? That's a big question. If you are a big yes to this one question, nothing else matters. If you are a stagnant pool, getting entangled in this and that every day, and finding devious reasons as to why you're entangled, then you're a hopeless case. You are a waste of time on this planet. When I say waste of time, I'm saying a wasted life because your life is just time. Some other creature could have lived. A grasshopper would have hopped around with more joy than a devious human being. Yes or no? We could make 1,000,000 grasshoppers or butterflies out of you for the same body weight. Yes or no? If you're not capable of something better than every other creature, we have no business because we are a bloody expensive life. Yes or no? We are a very expensive life, expensive in every way. To eat, sleep, to walk, how many arrangements we need? Yes or no? From footwear to clothes to buildings to… how many arrangements? I don't see a kitchen anywhere in the forest, but they're all well fed. Now did you see the elephant walking with shoes? Very expensive life. For so much expense, this must do something better than every other creature can do. We as a species, as a human race, have done many terrible things, many wonderful things also. But for every wonderful thing we do, we have at least one terrible thing to show, if not more. Spiritual process means just this, that every day you keep subtracting your terrible things. A terrible thought, a terrible emotion, a terrible word, a terrible action, every day, one a day. You'll be doing great in a month or two. Am I underestimating you? That I believe you have only 30 terrible things most terrible thing about human beings is that they're so busy with their own stuff, they don't feel the pain and suffering and what other life is going through. Not sensitive. Not being sensitive is the most terrible crime, because if we were sensitive, not ego-sensitive, life-sensitive, if we were life-sensitive, everything that we can do, we would anyway do. What we cannot do, what to do? We can't do, that's all. But what we can do would happen. A Sudanese man, you know Sudan? There are two, you know. Hello? Yes. There are two Sudans. The Sudanese people, it is said, I'm not an expert on this, it is said most of the Sudanese people are of Indian origin. They still eat dosa. They have very similar culture, they look very much like Indians, mixed up with North African population, but they've gone there a few millennia ago. So a Sudanese man went to Morocco, to a camel market in Marrakesh, a very famous camel market. There's one in Rajasthan in Pushkar. So, he went to sell his camel. Then he found all the camels that were in the market were much bigger than his camel. So he looked around, every camel was bigger than his. Then he asked the Berber man, Berber is a tribe, the word barbarian comes from this tribe. The Berber man who was sitting with his large camels, he asked, how come your camels are so big and mine barely half the size? He said, it's very simple. I see your camel, it's not castrated. If you castrate your camel, it'll grow big. He asked, how do I do this? He said, it's very simple. Take 2 bricks and smash the testicles of the camel, and after that it'll grow very big. Won't it hurt? He asked. He said, not at all, I'll show you. And he brought one camel, took 2 bricks and smashed it. The camel screamed in pain and ran. This Sudanese guy asked, but you said it won't hurt. Well, it only hurts if you get your finger between the bricks. You're very sensitive to what happens to you, barely sensitive to what happens to everything else. In this condition, the most wonderful nature of the human being will not find expression. You have to become sensitive. You must understand the tree, the flower, the birds, and all creatures are very sensitive to everything that's happening around them. They won't go and hurt anything unless they need to eat. Yes? Unless it's their food. They never went about simply killing. Because they're very sensitive to life. Not in the way you understand, not as an emotion, but simply sensitive to life. Never did this tree branch come down and knock any of you down during a darshan. Be careful. Either it's for food or in self-defense, otherwise no animal is simply going on. So human beings have have to show little evolution, you know. We have to show little evolution, little more evolution than the other creatures which are on the force. At least like our nearest of the, our nearest relatives. At least that much. Yes, I know. In the world there is competition for resource, there is competition for everything. And some friction will happen here and there. I am not innocent of those things. But I want you to at least eliminate the friction that happens within you, though you have nothing to gain. Is it happening or no? Simply, you smelling every chicken, but you yourself won't pass the test. The summer is upon us sooner than it should be, hotter than it should be. Leaving a large part of India in very severe states of water shortages, crop failures, enormous amount of suffering for those who live on the land and off the land. The last few months, hundreds of farmers have committed suicide. Because rain may play truant, rivers may stop flowing, crops may not blossom. But the money that you have borrowed keeps ticking with compounding interests. Been very cruel to a lot of people. Those people who provide us with daily food, their children are starved out and they take their own lives. Not a good state. But still, in the last 50 years, there hasn't been a famine in the subcontinent. There have been very bad agricultural years, there have been droughts, but no famine. Before independence, we have seen some terrible famines where millions died. This land, this nation has seen some of the greatest things that a human being can do. It has also seen or endured the brunt of the worst things that human beings can do to themselves and to each other. We have seen the worst form of invasions and occupation, very cruel. Everything that was of immense value was demolished or tarnished. Everything that can be taken was taken. Homes were burned down, wives and daughters were ravaged, children slaughtered, but still people endured. They never wrote down their sufferings in their history books. This is unique to this culture. We never wrote down our sufferings recorded in our history books. Though everything was taken from outside, out of sheer inner strength, people survived. Not only survived, they kept their tradition, their culture, their spirituality. It's been put to various kinds of tests of the worst kind of religious innovations and exploitation, but still survived, not just survived, flourished. Because this culture learnt one thing, that which bends will never break. That's why first thing you do is bow down. That which bends will not break. This summer, weather could be harsh upon us. When the land heats up, when your head heats up, do you know how to remain cool? This is important. Because you cannot control the volume of heat. But you can become a solar panel, which you are actually. Every life, every leaf, every tree, every human being, every animal is actually a solar panel. The question is only, will it get burned down or will it generate new energy out of it? That's all there is. You need to understand life as you know it. What you right now call as me is life. Maybe right now you're referring to just your personality, which is essentially a bundle of thoughts, emotions, opinions, ideas and prejudices. Of course, I'm missing out the important thing. Leaving that part of your personality, if you just refer to this as me, essentially you're referring to this life. This life process is me. This life process has not grown, please see. It is the same life process. If you do not remember the womb, at least you remember when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age. When the body was that small, it was the same life process. Now it is the same life process. It will be the same unless you become free from the 5 elements and then it bursts open into a different possibility. This whole terminology of spiritual growth is a false terminology because there is no such thing as spiritual growth. Either you explode into another state or you don't. No, many times I did explode, but again, I'm the same. That's because during the Diwali time, if you try to light the crackers, there are some crackers, you light them, you thought they're going to go boom, but they do You light them again, then you have to really poke some, just a small little, the incense stick that you're using is not enough, you really have to put something bigger fire inside, then they go boom. But then you have to be careful because they're going to explode too quick in your face. So, your experiences of those moments when you almost exploded is like that. I almost became boundless. I want you to experiment this almost. I almost had my dinner. I almost went to the toilet. I almost had my breakfast. Please do that for the next 3 days. I almost. Then you will be ready to explode in some way. So all those things which really matter, either you do it or you don't do it. Spiritual process, you almost, you keep on almosting. So, how did I become a full-fledged human being? You have not become a full-fledged human being. I'm not trying to insult you, I'm just reminding you. You have not become a full-fledged human being. A full-fledged human being is too immense to be described. He's not a humbug, a made-up thing. A full-fledged human being is a phenomenon. And that will not happen slowly. Yes, you have to cultivate it every day for it to explode one day, but it doesn't happen slowly. Slowly you can create the situation. Slowly you can create the situation. But explosion is one time, and when it happens, nobody can miss it. Neither you can miss it, nor anybody around you can miss it, because it's there to see. So, how does this little piece of life, these two cells that met in somebody's womb, became a meatball to start with, became a life process, and now a human being. Human being, yes, not a full-fledged human being, no. This has to become a full-fledged human being means the same things that nurture you are the same things which bind you. The same things which look like the source of your life are also the limitations upon your life. That is why people are so confused as to what to remove and what to keep. All the things that you think are the goodies or the baddies too, that's a problem. If it was very simple, goodies were different, baddies were different, very easy to dump the baddies. The goodies are baddies, baddies are goodies, that is the problem. So, you have to dump the goodies and the baddies, or you have to embrace the goodies and the baddies. Embracing the goodies and the baddies is very difficult. Your life would become very multi-dimensional if you could but you cannot do that. You may pretend to do that. People's idea of embracing everything is, they try to paint everything as good. And they call themselves saints. There is nothing saintly about it, it's quite silly. Not being able to see what is what in the world is not saintliness, it's just being silly. But it passes off as saintliness. I see goodness in everything. It's not saintly, it is silly. Different things are different ways. If you don't know how to deal with it, you're just being silly, not being saintly. But unfortunately, it passes off as saintliness. Being able to see everything just the way it is and still being able to accept it absolutely the way it is takes a lot. So it's better to keep a little distance from everything. Keep small distance, you don't have to run away, just a little distance from everything. You deal with everything but with a little distance. This is a easier way to handle. I'm not saying it is a better way, it is a good way. I'm just saying it's easier way. If you like to do it the more exciting and more difficult way, you're welcome. Only if you have the strength not to break up on the way, you attempt that. Otherwise, it's better to keep a little distance. You look at on everything, it doesn't matter for me whether it's good or bad. From everything I keep a little distance, from everything. Now what is this Sadhguru? Just in the beginning you were talking about love, now you're talking about distance. Only because there is distance you can laugh, please know that. If you create anything which is receptive, life will naturally come to it. It doesn't matter who you are, generally a womb is a natural space which has been created with that possibility that if a little formation happens there, actually it's just a meatball at that time. It's a very wrong way to… obscene way of referring to you when you were a fetus in your mother's womb, an obscene way of saying it. I am saying it this way because I want you to understand it's just a meatball. Even now you're just a meatball. Except for the life process that is throbbing within you, you're just a meatball, aren't you? What is this Sadhguru? All these insults, meatball, water body, what else are you going to call us? If the life doesn't throb within you, you are just a meatball. If a tiger walks in right now, he goes for you, he sees you as a meatball, I want you to know. Yes or no? He doesn't see you as a possibility for enlightenment. He doesn't see you as some great something. He sees you as a meatball and he'll treat you as a meatball and he will make you into a meatball. Yes or no? If you don't like it, if you want to experiment, walk into the forest and see. An elephant may treat you as a football, but the tiger will treat you as a meatball. Football you're not. Some of you are working towards it, but you're not a football. That's a wrong perception of the elephant. But tiger's perception is right, you are a meatball, isn't it? So before life entered, you were definitely a meatball. But suddenly, the moment this life entered, suddenly this just meatball becomes a live process and a tremendous possibility. A little meatball, what a possibility it's become. That meatball also became a Buddha, that meatball also became a Krishna, that meatball became so many wonderful things on this planet. So So I want you to understand that today what you are is not the point. If you allow it to function, this process of life, if you allow it to burst open, then the possibilities are immense. Nature has delivered you here to this level of intelligence, to this level of capability, to this level of consciousness, free. Total free ride, isn't it? From being an amoeba, a single-celled micro creature to what you are today, absolute free ride, isn't it so? Total free ride, without even you asking for it. Here, just here, you are expected to do your own thing. And don't treat it as a burden, it is a privilege that now nature has decided, the Creator has decided that you are worthy of being given a choice as to how you live. This is the greatest privilege that the Creator Himself has decided that you are worthy of being given the choice to be whichever way you want to be. Please prove your worthiness, don't disappoint Him. Lot of people in the world are depressed simply because of the Creator's work, isn't it so? They're questioning His judgment also. That which is the very basis of who you are, that which brought you from being a single-celled micro creature to who you are right now without unasked, it brought you till here. You're questioning the judgment of that also. Why is creation like this? Why is it like this? It should have been some other way. This is not intelligence. Don't ever convince yourself to think this is intelligence. This is the height of ignorance. The privilege that has been handed over to you, that now your life is your own. Everything is by choice. This moment how you are is your choice. Please enjoy the privilege. Please exercise the privilege. And only then you can say, I am a full-fledged human being. May this happen to you. Gautama went to every known master of the time. He was intellectually so brilliant and his longing so great. If he went to a place, what normally somebody would pick it up in years, he would do it in weeks. The 8 types of samadhis, he achieved all 8 of them, but still he knew this is not fullness of life. Still longing. When nothing else worked, he took to an extreme path which is called as samanas. One of the most basic aspects of their life is they never ask for food. Just keep walking, 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 walking. Gautama took the path so severely that he didn't walk in the direction as to where food is, he simply walked straight. In the process, he destroyed his body so badly, his body became so weak. He became all skin and bones because he did not go in search of food. Unless it came to him, he never ate. One day, he came to the banks of Niranjana. This is a small stream, just about 2 feet, flowing little swiftly. He came, he tried to cross. Halfway down, he could not take another step. He did not have the strength in his body. There was a dead branch of a tree. He held on to it. We do not know how long he stood there. In his weakness, in his inability to stand there, holding on to this must have felt like a long time. It might have been just a few minutes, it may be a few hours, we don't know. But in his experience, it was a long time. He just hung there. He has no strength to take the next step, but he's not the kind to give up. Then suddenly he realized the problem was that he was trying to realize, not allowing that to take him, he's trying to take that. He's trying to realize something which is limitless, which is boundless. Then he became absent. Suddenly he had the strength to take those few steps across the river, went and sat down under the Bodhi tree. He sat down and decided, I will sit here. Either I must become a part of it or I will die here. I will not get up from this place. He just sat down. The full moon was rising and he attained to his fullest. And he sat there in a certain state of ecstasy and blissfulness. Intoxication is the nature of the moon. May 10th is a special Purnima or a special full moon day because it's called Buddha Purnima. This is the day Gautama the Buddha got enlightened. You know this? This year it's on 10th of May. This full moon day is the day Gautama the Buddha got enlightened. There are many aspects to his life. The most important aspect is that he is a Buddha. That's not his name. His name is Gautama Siddhartha, but he is a Buddha. Buddha means he transcended his intellect. Bhu means buddhi, dha means dada. Buddhi means the intellect, dada means one who is above. One who is above his intellect is a Buddha. One who is in his intellect is a non-stop suffering human being. Something happens, they suffer, nothing happens, they suffer, whichever way. That is, if you're below the mind, we call them Buddhu. You're missing the point. If you're above the mind, you're a Buddha. If you're below the mind, you're a Buddhu. If you're in the mind, you're non-stop suffering. So how did he become this? He tried many things in his life. He was a prince of a small princely state. Because some yogi predicted that this will either become a great emperor or become a great sage. When he made this prediction, the father got little excited. He did not want him to become a great sage, he wanted to become a great emperor. So he decided he will not expose him to… because he thought by being exposed to some suffering or misery, he may turn into a sage. So he kept him in utter pleasure, the best of food, best of clothes, best of pleasures, everything. When he was 19 years of age, he got him married to a very pretty young woman, kept him in a palace secluded from the rest of the society where he lives in pleasure, never exposed to any kind of suffering. One day he thought he will just take a drive through the town. He asked his charioteer to take him across. So he was going, and then he saw a man who was old, was going like this. So he had never seen an old man in his life. His father had protected him from all this. He said, what happened to him? So the charioteer, oh, he's just an old man. How does it happen? He asked. Said, everybody gets old someday. He looked at himself, he was a nice youth. What, me also? Said, yes, everybody gets old. They live long enough, they get old. This was a realization for him. I will become like this. Then he saw a man lying on the street who was ill with something, not able to get up, in great suffering. He said, stop, what is this guy? What's he doing? He said, oh, he's sick, unfortunately. What does that mean? He said, my body, sometimes it gets sick. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to just anybody. Me, a prince, it can happen to me. It can happen to anybody. Then he said, oh, I can become like this. Then they were going further, he was completely disturbed by this. Then he saw a funeral. They were carrying a dead body of a man. What happened to that guy? Oh, he just died, that's all. What does that mean? That happens to everybody without exception. Then he said, what am I doing? Just eating, pleasures, nonsense, what am I doing with myself? And he struggled, he went into turmoil within himself. This suddenly being a prince and these pleasures and all this palace suddenly broke apart for him, and he started looking, what is the point of all this? This is going to get old, this may get sick, for sure this will be dead. What am I investing my entire life in this? But by then he had an infant boy. He looked at his wife and his child, this loving wife and this lovely little baby. He could not leave. He struggled and struggled and struggled. By then, a little over 1.25 years passed. When the boy was 1.5 years of age, he could not hold it anymore. In the middle of the night, like a thief, without telling anybody, he slipped out of the palace and left for good. He went in search, I want to know the truth about this life. He went from school to school. These are times when different schools were established in India. At one point, there were over 1,800 schools. I'm saying not just institutions, 1,800 different ways of doing things, 1,800 different varieties of yoga. Not the kind that you're seeing in California, somebody doing like this, somebody doing like this, really intricate expressions. It is like how the medical science is becoming today. 25 years ago, you wanted a medical checkup, all you needed was your family doctor. Today, for every part of your body, there is a doctor. A few years ago, I had a knee injury, I was playing soccer and I broke something in the knee. And I was all packed up and I was speaking. That's how I got into golf, because of this knee injury. Somebody told me, gifted me a golf kit and said, Sadhguru, you're too old for any other game, you just play golf. So I was sitting there in Atlanta and talking, speaking at a place. Then I was in pain, I couldn't even move. So when this is over, when I was speaking, one person raised his hand, I thought he wants a question. But then he said, Sadhguru, I would like to examine your knee after this is over, I'm a knee doctor. I said, come on, you're an orthopedic. So, no, I'm a knee doctor. Then I said, right or left? Which one are you? So specialization is going. A time will come, probably in 50 years' time, if you want a medical checkup, you need 100 doctors to check you. By the time you get these 100 appointments, maybe you need an undertaker. then it'll become ridiculous. Okay, you went to 3 doctors, all right. You went to 5 doctors, all right. If it becomes 50, 100 doctors for a medical checkup, it's become ridiculous, isn't it? This happened to yogic system. People started specializing and specializing in variety of small things. Each specialization has a whole thing by itself. Someone just came and told me they're a dentist, okay, I'm not speaking in any of this thing. For example, dentistry, just 32 teeth, all right? They study for 9 years, 32 teeth. 9 years of study, still they don't know everything about it. That's the nature of creation. If you start studying one tooth at a time, you will see each one of them has something specific about it. Somebody can spend a lifetime of study just learning about one tooth. Just see if you had 32 dentists to look into your mouth. Disaster you are, isn't it? So as specialization happens, when it crosses a certain point, it'll become ridiculous. This happened to yoga. It crossed that point where 1800 schools, different specializations of yoga happened. So that is when Patanjali came and kind of assimilated everything into Yoga Sutras to minimize this expanse that was growing endlessly. So when Gautama came, it was post-Patanjali, but still there were many things. So he went from school to school. He pursued 8 different forms of samadhi. We're talking about samadhi, okay. He pursued 8 different forms of samadhi. He saw all of them were wonderful experiences, but still it did not liberate him. So in this condition, he was walking as a samana. There's a certain system of practice called as samanas. Their fundamental practice is this: they will never ask for food. You should not go in pursuit of food because they want to beat the fundamental instinct of survival. No matter what, you're always going in pursuit of food, please understand this. You may complicate it in so many ways, but fundamentally, you're talking so much about economy means you're just thinking about survival all the time, isn't it? Survival glorified, but still it is survival. So one fundamental sadhana for them is, you never pursue your instinct of survival. You simply keep going. So samanas used to just walk, never asking for food. But the culture was sensitive. If they saw a spiritual person walking, people will cook at home and run behind him and serve him wherever he is, because they know he will not ask for food. Today, if you become a samana, you will walk yourself to death. Those days, people were sensitive to his sadhana and responded. So there were thousands of samanas walking the country. So Gautama became a samana. And even if you are not asking for food, you will walk near a town. So the food will come. But Gautama took it too seriously and just walked. He became all bones. Just bones and a bag of skin, like that he became. Then he came to a place where there was a river called Niranjana. Unfortunately, that river is gone now, no more river. Just about 18 to 20 inches of water, maybe moving little rapidly. He stepped into it, halfway down into the river, he did not have the energy to cross. There was a tree branch, a dead branch, he just held on to it. He doesn't have the strength to take the next step, but he's not the kind of man to let go. He held on, we don't know for how long, people say for a very long time. Maybe it was 2 minutes. When you're feeling so weak, those 2 minutes might have looked like many years. Then as he hung on, he just realized, what is it that I'm striving for? What is it I'm wandering the entire country, growing from school to school, learning this, learning that, what is it that I'm looking for? Then he realized, there's really nothing. This life is on. All I have to do is just take away the barriers which are not allowing me to experience this. When he realized that everything is within him, there's nowhere to search, suddenly he had the energy to take the next step and the next step. He crossed the river, came and sat down under that now very famous Bodhi tree, which has become more famous than the Buddha himself. A part of the tree, a remnant or a progeny of the tree still exists in Bodh Gaya. And he sat under the tree. It was this full moon night which is coming now, on 10th of May. He sat there and he sat there with this determination. Either I must see the ultimate nature of my existence now, or I will sit here and die. I will not open my eyes till I know this. Once he made that resolve, because the only problem is there is no resolve. Every 2 minutes, your intentions are changing. If you are totally on, to know what is within you, how long should it take? It should happen in a moment, isn't it? Because there's no distance to travel. Time is a quantity which is necessary only when there is a distance to travel, isn't it? If there is no distance to travel, if I ask you, how long does it take for you to sit here? You're already sitting. It's already there. It doesn't take any time. So you are already alive and on. It doesn't take any time for realization because you don't have to do anything particular. When he saw this, he was fully enlightened and the moon was shining. And he had not eaten for many months on end properly, years, actually 4 years he was a samana. And people around him, he had gathered about 5 disciples, I think. These guys thought he's real because he doesn't eat, he's really rigid. And they saw he's in some state, exuberant state, and they could see the light on his face. Then they were waiting for him to open his eyes and give the teaching. He opened his eyes, looked at them, smiled and said, "Cook something, let's eat." They were totally disappointed, they thought he's lost it. They walked with him for 4 to 8 years when he had nothing but torture. When he got enlightened, they left him because they wanted to hear something severe. He said, "Cook something, let's eat. We've been wasting our time." There are many beautiful episodes in his life. When he one day walked upon the river bank after he has become a Buddha and went and sat down under a tree. Tree, not because tree is the best place to sit under, you know, ants can get you. Because that was the only real estate of those times. There are no buildings and buildings and buildings everywhere. So tree was a good place, a pleasant place to sit under. Rather than sitting in harsh sun, you sit under a tree. An astrologer who was of great proficiency in his trade saw the footprint on the riverbank. He had come to… In India, people of any… this thing means… bath means always river. Those rivers are going away, I will tell you later. Bath means always river. So he came for a bath, the river, then he saw the footprint. There is a whole science, or rather observations, through which by looking at the way one's feet is, somebody predicts exactly what he will do. So he saw the footprint and then he saw that this is the footprint of an emperor, somebody who should rule the world. Then he wondered, Why would such a person be in this remote place near a jungle? Then he followed the footprint, thinking he will meet an emperor. Then he saw this monk, Gautama, sitting under a tree. Then he looked at he thought either my astrology has gone all wrong, or I'm being fooled, or I'm in some kind of a hallucination. What's happening here? Then he went to Gautama and asked, "Who are you?" Gautama was in this kind of Jasjeet kind of state. He said, "I'm nobody. I'm just a nobody. But you have the feet of an emperor. You should conquer the world." Gautama said, "That I will, but not by conquest." See, there are two ways you can have the world, either by conquest or by inclusion. Yes? I can make you yours, either by capturing you, chaining you and making you do what I want, or by including you as a part of myself. Yes? Both ways, something or somebody becomes yours, isn't it? But if you go by conquest, it will be a pain in your neck, always. If you include, this will become a great enhancement of life. He said, "I am the emperor of the world." But then he said, "You're a monk, you own nothing." "I own nothing and I am a nobody. That is why everything is mine." Even mathematicians are trying to teach you the zero and the infinite are one and the same. So you becoming a no thing does not mean you're no use. You are a no thing means you have become all-inclusive, isn't it? You are something means you can only be that. You are a no thing, you can be any way you want. This is how this life is made. If your ability to respond is not curtailed, you can be anything you wish at any given moment, isn't it? So Gautama said, "I'm anyway the emperor of the world, if that's a word you like, but I'm actually a nobody, because everything is anyway mine. If you see I'm responsible for everything, everything is yours, isn't it? How does somebody become yours? Because you own them or you take responsibility for them? Because you take responsibility for them, they become yours, not otherwise, isn't it? If you own them forcefully, they will never be yours. Yes or no? Yes. If you forcefully own somebody, will they ever be yours? They'll never ever be yours. So this astrologer sat down. He said, "You are a monk, you have nothing, on top of it you say you're Jasjeet, I'm sorry. On top of it you say, I am a nobody, and everything is yours. What is this?" Gautama said, "You come, I have a way for you. You are busy making predictions of life. I have a plan. Why do you make predictions of life? You're incapable of making a plan and executing a plan. That is why you fall back on predictions, isn't it? Yes or no? If you are capable of making a plan and executing the plan, would you fall back on predictions? No. So Gautama said, "You are busy making predictions. I'm here, I have a plan. Come, become a part of my plan. We'll make something else happen. You must become a part of this plan. We can make something wonderful happen. This same world can be turned into paradise if all of us go by a paradise plan, isn't it? Yes or no? Yes. The question is only, do that, because between a possibility and a reality there is a distance. Or do we have the courage and the commitment to walk the distance? That's all it is. Yes?
You were saying four different ways of going into the enlightenment. So bhakti and karma together can reach us faster.
Isn't all mixed up? Generally your bhakti is karma, isn't it? Isn't it so? How can you separate them, I'm asking?
It's not separate actually. When we are practicing karma, we are totally dedicating into that.
It doesn't matter. Can you commit yourself to something without your emotion being involved in it? Can you? Please look at your life. Can you really commit yourself to something or somebody without your emotions being involved in it? Emotion is a big way of commitment, isn't it? Yes? So how can you separate them? You cannot separate them. So there is no need for you to unify them. Anyway they are together. If you live naturally, all of them are together, always. You cannot separate. What proportion, each person, that's the only question.
Thank you so much for taking time out to speak to me today. It's your image and the way you are and who you are. It surpasses you as someone who's quite mischievous and someone who's quite enlightened, but also very humorous and I have to say quite informed in some things that sometimes people don't even take time to consider and take a moment to look at some of the smaller things in life, instead of always tackling the big things. So I guess I have to ask, I mean, where did the message and how did you discover the light, I guess, that you are now shining upon everyone else?
I also thrive on the sunlight.
You're right.
And we have a lot of it in India.
Right.
The most important thing, the most important aspect of my life is I never identified anything as small or big. Even today, I pay the same level of attention to everything. I have no anything small or big. I have to kind of encapsulate that, I can say this. You know, my daughter has been traveling with me since she was 3.5 months of age.
Wow.
So that was a time when I was driving across India, building the foundation at that time. So every day we're in a different home. One big problem in the world is every adult want to teach. When they see a child, they want to teach. They want to teach them something that's not worked in their life.
Okay, interesting. Please give me an example of that.
It's obvious it's not worked because between most adults and their children, if you look at it, who is more joyful? The child is more joyful. So who should be a consultant for life? It should be the child. It's just that adults, the only qualification that they have is, they came here a few years ahead of the child. They might have learnt a few survival tricks. Beyond that, they know nothing about life that the child doesn't know. So I made one rule, nobody teaches her anything. Nobody teach her ABC, 1, 2, 3, Mary had a little lamb, because I don't care whether Mary had a lamb or not.
Brilliant.
So, nobody taught her anything. Because nobody taught her anything, she was all ears. By the time she was 18 months, she was speaking 3 languages fluently. And many other things like that, because no overload of trying to teach her anything. She simply picked up whatever she can. So when she was 12, 13 years of age, she came back from school one day and she was disturbed about what happened there. Then she said, you're teaching everybody so many things, you're not teaching me anything. I said, well, I am not known to teach anything unsolicited. Here you are. And I said, see, this is all you need to know. Never look up to anything. She looked at me like this, with a question mark on her face, whether, what about you kind of thing. I said, not even me. Never look up to anybody, never look down on anybody, and this is all. If you don't look up to anything, if you don't look down on anything, you will pay attention to everything. If you pay attention to everything and see everything just the way it is, without prejudice of what is big and what is small, what is good and what's bad, what is virtue and what is sin, simply look at everything as it is, you will effortlessly navigate your way through life. So, I'm not paying attention to small or big, I'm just paying attention to whatever there is.